Welcome to Third Eyesight. I'm your host, Juan Francisco, and I'm a spiritual intuitive who practices tarot card reading and mediumship. I've always been super curious about the supernatural and paranormal, and I'm here to share my stories and interview folks who want to share their own stories. Let's get to it. I'm here with the lovely Hannah Macintyre, clairvoyant medium and host of Mediumship Matters, which is one of my favorite podcasts. How are you doing, Hannah?
Woo! Hi, I'm so excited to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me onto your podcast.
It's such an honor, and Hannah has been a huge inspiration for Third Eyesight, so I'm just so excited to talk to Hannah today. So Hannah, tell us, where are you based and what is your life's work?
Well, my life's work is fumbling around in the abyss, trying to be the best human that I can be, but I know what you really mean from that. Hi everyone, I'm Hannah. I'm based near Canterbury in the UK, so southeast of England, and I work as a demonstrating evidential medium. I do tarot cards, oracle cards, that kind of thing. I teach spiritual development, and as Juan just said, I also host the Mediumship Matters podcast.
And we'll delve more into the podcast. And I want to tell folks that Mediumship Matters, when I discovered my own, or rediscovered, I guess we want to get really real about it, rediscovered my own intuitive ability. Hannah's podcast, Mediumship Matters, was such a huge part of my journey, and it really helped me get comfortable in learning that ability. So I highly recommend it to everybody, not just if you think you might be a medium, just listen to it. It might be very helpful. So I want to ask, what was your, and the way I want to ask this question, it's in a very specific way, because I would ask it usually, what was your first experience with spirit? But I do believe that we experience spirit in many different ways without realizing it. So I want to ask it this way. What is your earliest conscious memory of experiencing spirit? Like, did you ever have experiences as a child or first in your adulthood? Like, when did you first notice spirit in your life?
As an adult. So when I look back, you're exactly right. I had it exactly the same as you. So when I look back, there was stuff going on that I now go, oh, that makes sense. But actually, my first experience with the spirit world was 6 months in to a development circle where I'd been attending and going, is anyone there? No, no one's there. Is anyone there? Oh no, still no one's there, with all my expectation and the way that I wanted to receive it causing a massive barrier between me and the spirit world, thinking that I was going to be the one that didn't follow the rule, that anybody could do it and that there was something wrong. And then finally, we were doing our spirit guides stepping in and out of our energies, in and out. And for those of you that are developing, quite often it's easier to feel them leave than it is to feel them come in. And we were practicing that again for the 100th time. And I was still thinking there's nothing there, because I thought it was going to be bigger or stronger or more tangible, more physical. And then I just had this voice saying, can you see me now? And I nearly fell off my chair. And that for me was the first time that I was really consciously aware of it. Nothing, not magical, just me in the way in a room with a load of other people who were sharing all of their stories of wonderment while I sat there feeling like the dunce in the class.
Spirit is so simple, right? Because it wasn't, I feel like a lot of people expect Hollywood, some grandiose experience. But when you say you heard, can you see me now? Did you hear it audibly? Because in terms of clairaudience, for some folks, they hear it with their mind's ears, so to speak, or they hear it outside their body, like the way you're hearing me now. What was that like for you?
That one was outside of my body.
Wow.
But generally, when I hear spirit, it is my own voice in my own head. It's not that strong. But to be fair to the spirit world, I think they had reached the point where they knew if they didn't pull out something absolutely magical, I was just going to get in a strop and give up, because it had been ages and everybody else seemed to be able to do it and I couldn't. And now I understand what all of that was about. But at the time, I just felt like Yeah, because I expected it to be just like you said. People don't tell you that. They don't say clairaudient is a voice in your own head. They say I'm here, I see, and you think, oh my God, they're seeing it. You're seeing it like a whole vision right next to you. Well, I only get pictures in my mind, so I'm not as good a medium as you are. And then it turns out that everybody receives it like that, and everybody hears it as a voice in their own head, with very few exceptions. So I think they thought they better give me something really big.
Right. And it sounds like spirit, I'm just making a joke here, but it sounds like they were like, this girl's not listening. We got to get this girl's attention.
Yeah,
We got to really make a
sure.
bang.
For sure. And spirit are subtle. I think one of the biggest things that holds people back on their journey is the expectation that it will be more of a presence, more of a force, more of a feeling. And it is, in fact, very gentle, very subtle, barely discernible.
Yeah, yeah, totally. And how did you discover your first circle? What was the journey to going into your first circle?
So I was working as a PA at a music school, and a friend of mine had got my grandfather through unexpectedly. She was one of the music teachers. I was the PA. She came into work one day and just went, I've got your grandfather with me, and just blew my mind. And then she said, you're shiny. You should come with me to my group. You're shiny. You can come. And I was like, cool. Sounds amazing. And so I just rocked up. It was an advanced circle. I had zero experience, zero connection with spirit. I rocked up into this room of people that I'd never met, apart from my friend, and they were all having these batshit crazy experiences. And I thought that I would sort of just watch them work. I didn't go because I thought I was gifted. I didn't go because I thought I could do it. I didn't go because I thought it would be my career. I went because it's super cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then gradually had my mind blown.
Yeah. And did you find that, because what I've noticed, people I've met like us who have worked on developing our abilities, at least like I'll speak for myself, I've always had a fascination with what supernatural, the paranormal, the other side, since I was a very young kid. Would you say the same for yourself?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
I know you like it's not, I know that we're not really all about the spook of things, but I know we like spooky things. I've heard you say you like spooky things. So
Yeah, I
was that
do.
you as a child as well?
Yeah, from about the age of 12, I've been obsessed with Stephen King ever since. Absolutely love Stephen King as an author. I used to watch Medium. I used to watch Ghost Whisperer. We had something called So Haunted, which is absolutely rubbish in the UK. So we had lots of things like that. I did love it. I also love a bit of witchcraft, practical magic, the craft, all of those kind of things. So always really, really into that stuff, but just because I thought it was kind of cool and wacky, not because it felt like a calling.
Yeah. Did you have a show called Most Haunted as well?
Oh, that might be the one.
Oh, and like you said, So Haunted.
Yeah, I might have
Yeah,
just made
it was
it.
there was like a blonde lady. They're
Yeah, he
all
used to
from
just
Britain.
scream
So
a
over the
lot.
top. So
Yeah.
over. I was obsessed with that show. I remember, this is me reminiscing a little bit. I remember there was one night they had we had it on something called, we have the Travel Channel, and it would show on the Travel Channel here in the United States. And when they would have actual live investigations at properties, like they were filming it live minute by minute, and you could go on a chat and like comment on it. I was that person, but I look back, I'm like, this show is so over the top. Oh my
Yeah.
goodness, it's
Yeah.
getting cold. It's getting cold. I mean, you made a TikTok video about what and about what quote unquote ghost hunting shows are like, and you were
Oh.
on point because it's getting cold. Is it cold now? Oh, I feel cold, cold air. It's always about being cold.
And it's just all just so over
Very
the top.
performative. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but I think for a lot of us, it introduced it to us. And so it served a purpose, even though I still feel that a lot of my work is managing people's expectations, that I'm not Jennifer Love Hewitt and I can't see them in the physical space, and I'm not conversing with them like I'm talking to you. It's different. So I still feel like a lot of my work is managing people's expectations with that. but I do think it got a lot of people interested in it and opened a lot of people up into a world that perhaps we needed to know was there.
Yeah, and I do feel like I'm noticing that the global culture is slowly becoming more comfortable. I can't tell you how many United States media outlets have astrology columns and horoscope columns. I mean, they've always been there, but I feel like they're only increasing.
Yeah.
Especially if a lot of the pop culture magazines, it's so common. And not that astrology is directly related to this, but I think it's also one bridge to a lot of what we do in some respects.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I've heard you mention on your podcast, and you've actually taught me this, how to see the phrase ghost hunting differently. And I actually really appreciate how you've mentioned that hunting is not really a kind word. It has this connotation to it that we are trying to like pin down spirit, and that's not really accurate. So I wanted to ask you, what are your thoughts on like paranormal investigations? Have you done them? Do you usually not recommend folks to do them? What are your feelings about investigations?
I think it depends where you're coming from to it. So, yeah, I don't like the term hunt because you wouldn't, well, unless you're a psychopath, you wouldn't say, I'm off now to go hunt some people. So it's the same difference. I think that a lot of the ghost hunts, and not all of them, before everyone starts messaging me, not all of them, but a lot of them, especially in the UK, are very sensationalistic. They are like Most Haunted. I mean, physical mediumship, I don't know what it's like in the States, but in the UK we used to have loads of physical mediumship circles, but these would be people that would go week in, week out, 52 weeks of the year to be able to get a physical presence from the spirit world. It would take a huge amount of dedicated effort and attention, and yet somehow on these ghost hunts, you've got people walking in off the street who have never worked with the spirit world before, have got no connection to them, and the spirit world are pulling on their clothes and pulling their hair. I just think, really?
Yeah.
And as somebody that's worked with the spirit world for 12 years and done huge amounts of development, huge amounts of groups, physical mediumship is rare and hard to come by. So that makes me feel like it's not necessarily always in the same vein. I've never done a hunt myself because I'm a wimp. And so even though I don't believe that there's anything spooky in the spirit world, because I don't, I have watched so many horror movies, so much scary stuff, that even when I let my dog out for a wee at night, I'm scared of the zombies from I Am Legend coming to get me. So I just know that I wouldn't be a great representative for the energy there, because I'd be going, oh, like Yvette Fielding, freaking out, but not because I think it's spirit, but just because I've got the heebie-jeebies.
You just brought me back. Her name was Yvette Fielding.
Yeah,
My goodness,
yeah.
I haven't heard that name in so long. And the medium was I'm assuming he's a real medium. His name was
Derek
Derek.
Akora, yeah.
Yes. I don't know much about Derek, so I can't say I can judge whether he's authentic or not. But yes, it's interesting because when I've gone on paranormal investigations, usually they're open to the public because they're usually tourist attractions.
Mm-hmm.
But when I do them, I'm there with the intention of I want to learn more about spirit, and I want to experience something for the purpose of learning. And a lot of people, most of other people who are there with me, just a part of the tour group and people I don't know, they're there to get spooked. And it sets the intention. I remember I was on a tour in Savannah, Georgia, which is known for being very quote unquote haunted as a city. It was a big battleground for a very long time during the Civil War. But anyways, I was on this tour and I was paired up with a family of 3 or 4 people, and they were all so spooked, especially the youngest boy. He was a college age. And I'm the one there saying, they're not here to scare you. We're asking them to say hi, so they're gonna say hi.
Yeah.
So and don't be afraid. We have power here. We have the power to protect ourselves. And I was the one being very zen about it, and the other people were just like, oh my god, what was that? Oh my god, what was that? And of course it is spooky. It does spook me out sometimes, but I think the intention is definitely, like you said, the intention is so important. So important. And I'm thinking of this Netflix docuseries. The name is escaping me. It was released during I think during 2020. Oh my goodness. It's escaping me, but it was a 6 episode series where each episode was on a different, like one was on reincarnation. And I remember the episode on physical mediumship, but that went into like, is it called ectoplasm and all
Yeah,
things like, I mean, that stuff is interesting. I don't know much about it to make any judgment about it, but looks like it takes a lot of effort, a lot of energy.
exactly.
Yeah.
I know people that have been on those kind of things, and rather than communication and communicating with the spirit world, it does seem to be more focused on getting the cheap thrills and freaking people out. And I'm not saying all of them are like that, but just be discerning. Now, if you want to go and be spooked, I don't judge you for that, because I like watching horror movies, but you have to go, well, I'm going for that experience, not this is how the spirit world works. And that for me is the difference, because the spirit world, I know it sounds fluffy, but it is light and love. There is love. They want to communicate, they want to talk to you, they want to let you know they're there because it's very life affirming, but they don't want to scare you. So anything else, and I know people that have gone on those things and done Ouija boards on graves at 1 o'clock in the morning. That's never going to have a positive result. When I do Ouija boards, we get people's grandparents through who give evidence. It's a different thing.
Right. And I don't know if I want to be in a dark room with only red lighting and then have ectoplasm show up and a hand popping out. Like I've heard these stories of like hands popping out of nowhere and it's there's so much to learn. And
Yeah.
actually in that series, there's a good segue into my next question. The Arthur Findlay College is mentioned quite often in that series. I know that you've taken courses at Arthur Findlay. So for those who don't know what that is, could you explain what Arthur Findlay College is and why is it like Hogwarts?
I'm actually there in 4 days' time.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful.
So it's a big old stately home that has been bequeathed to spiritualists to go and learn about spirituality. And there's just magic in every molecule of the place. You sit in reception and they've got the security cameras for around the property and you can just watch orbs. You just sit there. I don't know how the receptionists get on with their day. They kept asking me if I was okay because I was just looking at the security cameras with my mouth hanging open. It's such an amazing, magical place. And there's something really lovely about leaving the day-to-day humdrum of your life or your closet under the stairs where you live, and then going to a place where you must know this one in life. Sometimes you feel like you have to validate your beliefs and your mediumship and your spirituality. You go to a place where everybody who's there believes in the spirit world. Every conversation you can have with anybody doesn't start with you trying to validate or quantify or explain yourself or any form of judgment, because we're all there for the same thing. And it does create this kind of amazing, magical atmosphere. So you can go there. They have courses all year with lots of different tutors, and you can go there and experience and learn about mediumship and the spirit world. And it's just a really incredible time.
That does sound amazing. And
Yeah.
is there one experience you could think of that just has stuck out to you as I'm sure there have been many, but just one, if you could share one experience that's just stuck out to you as being so memorable for you?
Oh my gosh. Okay. I think, well, it was the first place I ever went on platform. So that was a massive thing for me. So the thing with all learning, and I will say this to anybody who's learning from any teacher, is you can't expect your teachers to do it for you. And that's something that Arthur Findlay College really taught me, because you can have the most amazing teaching, but they're still trying to manage a classroom full of people, whether you're adults or kids or not, and you have to put yourself forward. And what happened was I had set myself a target that I would be on the stage and do some mediumship for the first time ever before I left. And in my head, where I was at that time, perhaps definitely slightly ego bound, I was like, right, well, by Saturday to Saturday, by next Saturday, I will have been on that stage and I will have delivered mediumship. Gets to Thursday, still haven't been picked. And I'm getting a bit like, why aren't you picking me? The spirit world has forsaken me. This is what I wanted to do. And then my friend Sue, who I was with, pointed out that when I was putting my hand up, I wasn't really putting it up. I was sort of half, because I was nervous, and also that disempowering thing that we all do, where we feel like it needs to be preordained or predestined for us to be able to do it. So I'll put a limp one finger in the air at shoulder height and expect to be picked, rather than putting my hand right up and all 5 fingers in the air. So once she pointed out that that's what I was doing, I had to put my hand right up, and of course I went straight on and had a go. Now, it's always, I'd love to tell you that this is a fluffy, happy story, but it isn't, because it was my first experience doing mediumship. And I was so convinced that nobody would be able to take the spirit I had coming through. And I ended up with 3 people who could take it. And I couldn't separate it. Every piece of evidence I got, they were all saying yes to, yes, yes, yes. Yeah. And I was like, oh, and that was really hard to manage for my first go. And so the teacher that was running it said to me, you pick where you think you should be going. So I picked who I thought I was with and carried on and worked with them and finished the link. And then at the end, one of the other ladies who had been saying yes to stuff came up to me and told me that I had ruined her chance to communicate with her mother, which was very stressful and very upsetting. Obviously, she was very upset and very emotional. I was very upset and very emotional, because mediumship does bring out that vulnerability in you. But it was one of the best learnings that I've ever had. So in how you can please people and the limits within it and stuff like that. So it is hard. You do have to put yourself out there. You will feel like you're not ready. You will have to take that leap anyway, but there's no better place for it, where the audience of everybody believes in the spirit world. That's an amazing thing. You never get that in an audience in the real world. You might get half the people there and half the people waiting for you to prove it, but never all. Does that make sense?
Yes, makes total sense. And thank you for sharing that, because it just shows that I think people who decide not to, or not as open to delving or applying their own intuitive ability and learning the way we seek to learn. I don't like to say people who aren't mediums, because I do believe we all are mediums. So I'm going to say people who do not apply themselves in the way that we do in this respect. They do expect us to, like, if you say you're a medium, that means you're going to get everything on point and it's going to be perfect. It's going to be like an edited TV show. And so thank you for sharing that, because it shows that this is, we're always learning. And actually, something I struggle with, I want to ask you how, if you struggled with it yourself and how you work through it. Impostor syndrome is my middle name. I have this belief that mostly all, and it's just an opinion, a belief, that mostly all well-intentioned intuitive workers struggle with imposter syndrome, because we have such good intention in what we do, and we don't want to, we are very hyper aware of not taking advantage of something or somebody. So I wanted to ask you if that's something you struggle with yourself, and how you work with it or through it.
Yes, absolutely. I don't know a medium that doesn't have it. You have 2 choices with it. It's never going to go. That's the first thing I want to make really clear, because I held myself back for years waiting for it to go. And I just kept telling myself that the spirit world would take it away, but they can't take away something I'm producing, I'm creating. So it's something you have to either choose to push through or let it beat you. And that is your 2 choices. And so I'd love to say that I have reached a stage with all the demonstrations and the thousands of people that I've demonstrated to now, thousands. I would love to say it's all gone. It's not at all. I still go to open my mouth when I stand up in front of everybody and think, oh my God, who am I to say I can do this? What? I'd like to tell you that every time I win, sometimes it beats me. Very recently, I did a podcast called Ouch, which is, I think, in honesty, was my imposter syndrome taking the driving wheel and me allowing it, which was good lesson that I've just got to be so mindful about what zone I'm in and where I'm at, because that really impacted me. Didn't impact my work, funny enough, but it impacted how I felt and how I felt about my mediumship. And the thing about mediumship is it can always get better. So there's never a level where, if you're analytical like me and tick boxy like me, there's never a level where you will get to where you will fully say to yourself, that was freaking banging, I was amazing. There's always, I wish I'd handled that differently, or I wish I'd got that the right way, or I wish I'd said that, or I wish, because it is like, as everybody says, it is like charades, and you are having an experience. And just like when you play charades, if somebody says three men and a baby, and it's a completely different film, I'm trying to think of one, Home Alone, you don't get in a strop, you don't walk off and go, stuff charades, I can't play with you. You expect people to need to process it and to need to work with it, and you have to allow yourself that same experience. But it is hard, and we do set ourselves, I think, very high levels. And also, like you just said, we watch these TV shows where the ums and the ahs are edited out, where the highlights are picked. And also, one of the big things that I've realized recently after watching Tyler Henry on Netflix,
I love Tyler Henry.
I know, me too. But when you, in the real world, nobody interviews your sitters afterwards for them to say what an amazing experience it was. Right. They go, okay, thank you very much, bye, and leave the Zoom room. And that's that. And if you're lucky, they'll leave a review. But those moments where people are going, oh my God, and he said this and he said that, and it's so amazing, you don't get unless someone's filming a TV show for you, because who's going to ask them?
Right.
So you never get that kind of validation that looks so amazing. On occasion, someone might make the aha noise, you know, like, and then you go, oh yes, brilliant, woo, you know. But that's because we're also, especially us Brits, I think we're so wooden. We go very stiff, very still when someone's reading for us. It's like we're full body Botoxed and nothing happens.
Oh, that's hilarious. You know, I'm being reminded of how, and I grew up with a Judeo-Christian tradition, and I don't identify necessarily as a Christian today, but I was thinking when I was in elementary, as British culture may call it, primary school and secondary school, and elementary, middle school, and I was in religious school, we would learn about, I think his name was, I'm already forgetting, I'm a bad Christian today, like St. Paul the Apostle, and like people who wrote books of the Bible or characters in the Bible who were in their day and age within the stories were considered outcasts or were considered imperfect, but they wrote a book of the Bible and they were called on by God. And I think about how with imposter syndrome, when I first discovered my mediumship ability, I almost felt like, well, who am I to be doing this? Why am I having this experience? I have so many things I need to work on myself. I shouldn't be telling people, like, I need to be like Oprah, if Oprah is as Oprah as we think she is. I need to be like Oprah before I can do things like this. I need to, and not talk about success or money. I'm more like, I need to be this calm, gentle, and confident human being before I can do readings or tell people what their grandma is saying. And I believe that the universe, source, whatever you want to call it, it doesn't really care what station of life we're in. I think you would agree, or what anxiety we struggle with. Spirit's going to do the work, no matter what channel it is, whether it's us or someone else. It's going to come through somehow.
Absolutely. And I think what you've just said there is so important for people listening. And that's kind of the reason why I started my podcast, was to educate people that anybody can do this, but also that when you're doing it, it's okay to be a human being doing it. I love to drink lager, beer, as you would call it in the States. I like, I don't live on some lentil-based spring water diet. I watch trashy TV. I love Selling Sunset. I love it. It's
so I've heard.
Yeah, I couldn't get a less spiritual TV show to watch. It's all about spending money and fakery and arguments, but I love it. And that's the thing. I think we all get this idea that to be spiritual, in inverted commas, means different. And actually, I think we're here to be human. And the most spiritual thing you can do is try and be a good person within the humanness, not try and be a watered down kind of weird version.
Right. And can you imagine being someone who, I'm sure there are people out there who almost prefer to, like, they want to be above humanity. They want to, oh, I don't watch that. I don't drink that. I don't eat that. Almost like they want to be beyond human. And it's like, well, how are people going to relate to us or be comfortable with us? And not to say that those kinds of folks who conduct their life that way are less gifted or anything, but yeah, I prefer to be someone who is of the world, but also connected it's duality, it's possible.
Absolutely.
And you mentioned you starting Mediumship Matters. Could you delve a little more into what inspired you? Was there a certain experience or a journey you went through that inspired you starting the podcast?
Well, this ties in with what we're just talking about, because what inspired me was a red mist of rage. And I know that people think that being angry is not spiritual, but actually anger gets a lot of shiz done. And so what in the UK, I don't know what you have in the States, but in the UK, we have a epidemic of mediums who are in the public eye, who are selling fear, who aren't, I don't know if they're not communicating with spirit, or they're communicating with spirit through such a strict filter that they only receive things in a certain way. But what happened to me was I was watching, and I was genuinely watching because I wanted to see what other mediums were doing, because I think that's really, really good for your journey. And I was watching a medium do a live, and she said in that live, your loved ones in the spirit world are drawn to the energy of shares. Share this post into all of your groups, and you've got more chance of hearing from them because of the energy it generates. And they don't care whether it's a spiritual group or any group. So share it in the Lost Dogs, share it in the Watsons, share it in the for sale sites, and then your loved one might be able to come through me.
I'm rolling my eyes. People can't see it,
Yes.
but yes, continue,
And
please.
I was just astounded and that is somebody who in the UK is in magazines, is on covers of our spiritual magazines. This is someone who's well renowned in the UK. This isn't somebody who's shunned by the spiritual community. This is somebody who's on a pedestal within the spiritual community in the UK. And I just kept thinking, I couldn't stop thinking about it. And I kept thinking about all of those people who are desperate to hear from their children in the spirit world, or their husband in the spirit world, or their whoever, and just thinking that that is what they need to do, or that they need, stars on Facebook. It's all well and good as a donation, as a tip, but it really, if you want to work with that medium, book a reading with them. And if they're not doing private readings, then find one who is, that you trust. But don't keep putting money in and dribs and drabs and hope and all of that messing around, because it's just not how it works.
Yes.
And so I thought, actually, there's a lot of people out there that don't understand how it works. And imposter syndrome struck, and I thought, well, who am I to say any of this? I don't know stuff. Who am I to do this? But I thought, oh, well, I've got to do something. So I thought I'll give it a try. And here we are.
And the success of your podcast has been incredible. And not only that, it's helped me so much. It's helped me become more comfortable. And I feel like if I hadn't listened to your podcast as well as some other podcasts I listened to on this topic, I wouldn't have felt, I think the imposter syndrome would be louder, to be honest. And, when you were sharing that story about that medium that was putting up those posts or those advertisements of some sort, maybe it's dramatic, but my heart breaks for people on the other end of that, because I think it's one thing, like I've been on like the app Clubhouse. I don't know if you're familiar with Clubhouse, or like Twitter, when they do Twitter spaces, like they're like just like voice rooms where people talk to each other. And some intuitive workers will say, if you like a reading, please donate at this link. And they call it like an energy exchange. I think that's one thing. But
Absolutely.
when you gamify it, it's just, it's like, if you do this, I'll do this for you. And you make it like a contest of like survival of the fittest. Who's going to, if you can do this quickly, then I will. It's just, it leaves such a bad taste in my mouth. I think of all these folks who, I don't have, knock on wood, but whatever happens. I don't have experience losing someone tragically. But I can only imagine if I were so desperate to hear from my loved one, because I feel that I'm not in touch with them, or I don't hear them. And then I see something like that. It just, it breaks my heart. And yeah. And I was on a public, I don't know what it was. It was like a public readings on Zoom that I found through some app, or it was advertised somewhere, and it was free to attend. And there were maybe 100 people, and there was one card reader, one medium, and one I think what's it call it? Health medium, a medical medium.
Mhm.
And they gave everyone a number and then they spun a wheel. And, you know, it was free, so they weren't taking money from people. They were asking for donations. But I just felt, I mean, this is my own personal feeling. I felt really uncomfortable with like, we're all there and we're waiting, we're hoping the wheel lands on our number. And I just didn't sit right with me. And it's not to judge how they conduct what they do, but for me, it causes, I would never want to introduce that anxiety to a space where we're supposed to be calm and connecting, or not, we don't have to be calm, but at least I feel like it makes the openness to the other side a little more anxiety ridden. How do you feel about that?
I think it depends. So if you go to a demonstration of mediumship, it's the same thing. Your
Right.
loved one's coming through. You know that not everyone in the room is going to get a message. And I did a TikTok saying, if you want a message from a loved one in spirit, if you're in need, book a one-on-one. Don't
Mm,
go to a demonstration. And then my inbox was full of people getting so angry with me. But the fact of the matter is, if 50 people are in a room and you've got a medium working for 2 hours solid, you're probably looking at 10 to 12 links. Everyone in that room cannot get a message. It doesn't invalidate demonstrations of mediumship, but I think that we need to be open about what is actually possible for a medium to achieve. And that's the bit that gets me. It's absolutely fine how you want to pick how you're working with people, as long as you're not implying that, like you say, gamifying it. That was such a good way of explaining it. And I just thought of all these people desperately trying to get hold of people that they love, sharing the heck out of something. And I just, share if you want to, by all means. It helps mediums. It helps me dramatically when people share my podcast, when people write a review for my podcast. I'm sure it does for you too. But there's a difference between, please, this would help me, and if you want to hear from your loved one, they can't come through unless you do enough of this. And they're
yeah.
two very different places. The other one, I'm viewers of Third Eyesight. I am a very nice love and light person. Don't think I'm all ranty. But the other day I saw one of the other UK mediums sponsored post on Instagram saying, if you're seeing this message, it's meant for you. And then doing actually a very negative reading about how you can't trust everybody who's around you, and someone is talking about you behind your back. And it just, it wasn't a very empowering message. I think the spirit world are always going to empower you. And like, if that's happening, they will acknowledge it, but they'll tell you how to deal with it. They'll tell you it will be more positive than just good luck, don't trust people, book a reading with my team of psychics. But also, let's not mislead people. If you're paying for a sponsored ad, the reason that sponsored ad is turning up in someone's newsfeed is because you've paid for it. And I'm not saying don't advertise. I advertise, but be honest about how it's working.
It's funny you say that, because I heard you mention that on your podcast. And for some reason, I don't know if the algorithm listens to what I listen to, but I started seeing those pop up a lot in the last month. If you're seeing this message is for you. And then I'm like, do I follow this person? No, I don't. It says sponsored ad. And of course it's for me, because you're wanting it to be for me, quote unquote. So yeah, I find that very bizarre. And I think this is why, and I don't mean to make it sound like this makes everyone in this world look bad. Like, why are you doing this? That's what my impulse wants to say, but it's really just, I can understand how people who aren't involved in this work and are on the outside looking in, I understand how they could want to criticize it, because there are so many people who really want to take advantage. And it's not, I don't think it's that they're less gifted. They're just, their method is not the most authentic or with the most integrity. And yeah, thank you for mentioning that, because I think especially there are folks out there, and you said a lot of your work is about managing expectations. And I think when people see these kinds of things, their expectations are set so high up. And back to demonstrations and group readings, when I've gone to maybe 5 group readings in my life so far, and when I go, of course I want to be read, but I go thinking, well, if I'm not read, I'm excited to hear what other people are going to experience, and then I end up leaving knowing that there were other people who really needed. Like I said, I have not lost someone tragically, thank goodness, so far, and so I know I don't need a reading,
Mhm.
at least as much as other people in the room who've lost their children, who lost people to tragedies. And I feel like if I were to go into group readings and demonstrations focused only on receiving a reading, I wouldn't be open to how a message may come through someone else's reading for me. Because I think that
Absolutely.
happens too, that we can hear a message for ourselves. We can hear the medium say something to someone else. You go, I never thought of that way. And if I'm so focused
Absolutely.
on getting a reading and that's it, I'm not being aware, and I'm not opening my channels to hear that message through somebody else.
Yeah, for sure. And I just think you're right. It is something that as a medium, as a demonstrate medium, I have to manage. And sometimes I manage it well, and sometimes I don't. But that is that kind of thing. I've had people say to me at the end of demonstrations that I have thought have been okay enough, we'll say with imposter syndrome, good enough. And they've come up to me at the end and told me I'm fake because their grandfather would have come through to them because he loves them. And you say to these people, but there were 70 people here. Do you think your grandfather loves you more than that son who died in the car accident, who was talking to his mum? How can we quantify that? So
Right.
this is where we have to be sensible. If you really need to hear from somebody, book a one-on-one. Don't go to a dem. If you want to see the spirit world at work and you want to enjoy it and you want to be part of something amazing, go to a dem. But that should be the difference.
Right. And, I'm forgetting who said this. If you said this in your podcast, I apologize, but I'm blanking on who I heard say this recently. Someone compared going to a demonstration or a group reading with going to see a movie. You're paying to see a movie. You don't know if it's going to be good or not, but just because you go to see a movie, you paid for it and it's bad, doesn't mean you're never going to the movie theater ever again.
Uh-huh.
And I think people put a lot of focus on, I paid for this and they're supposed to be quote unquote good. And I was disappointed. And we're human. Those of us who are demonstrating or doing readings, we're human. And we cannot, I feel like I cannot guarantee I'm gonna be ticking off all your boxes, and I'm gonna be wowing you. And I don't mean to compare this work to seeing a movie necessarily, but I think when people compare, there are people out there that have commented on my post saying you're a scam, you shouldn't be doing this.
Yeah.
Um, but I feel called to it. And if you want to really get down to it, people pay for things all the time and don't know what to expect. And I think that's where I say, what is the difference? Of course, the difference being one is getting in touch with the spirit world, but I feel like people really categorize this work in a very specific way and judge it very differently.
Well, I went to the theatre the other day, and in the final song, they hit a bum note. Did it ruin the rest of the show? No, it didn't. But that was a bum note and it did hurt my ears. And I just want to add to what you've just said. I think people that go to mediums, whether it's one-on-one or whether it's demonstration, need to accept they may not even have one tick on their list, because the lists are an absolute nightmare. And what I always say at the start of every demonstration is, your loved ones in the spirit world know your tick list. They know what you are wanting them to say. And if it worked the way that you think it does, of course they would come in and say, my name is, I died, but actually what you have to do is look at if what you're hearing is correct, because the medium is we're trying to get information, we're having an experiment, an experience, we're trying to get that information through us in many different ways, and we can't guarantee, we can't tick it off. People have turned up before for readings with me and said, don't give me any evidence, don't tell me about them, we've set a password. Like,
Oh goodness. Oh my gosh. It's like an
yeah,
escape room. I don't know if you have escape rooms in
yes,
grave,
yeah,
but it's like the medium escape room.
yeah. And I wish it was like that. And of course, you watch Ghost Whisperer, it is like that. They can hear them, but it's not like that in reality. So,
Right. In your work, what has been your favorite part of working with mediumship? If there's one thing you can name.
Right. Well, I'm going to split this. I'm not concise ever.
Totally
I hope you're
fine.
expecting this. Okay. So one side for me personally, it's so life affirming. I am not afraid anymore. And I think there's so many people out there that are so afraid of dying, they're forgetting to live. And I think the more that you speak to people in the spirit world, the more you realize that every day is a gift, and it makes you make better choices for your own happiness. You don't postpone things. You eat that food that you were going to save for a special occasion. I've drunk more champagne since I became a medium than ever, because why would you have the cheap stuff? That kind of, you get into that kind of vibe with it, because I thought the majority of people that I would speak to would be elderly. And doing this work for 12 years, they're not.
100%.
They're not elderly. And actually, probably the average age of people I get through is late 40s. So in that scenario, I haven't got that much time left. So I'm going to live it. And of course, I hope that I have got longer than that. But we postpone, we push back. Just live. Choose your happiness today. Choose what's going to make you feel good today. And, it doesn't mean that the chores don't need doing, but it does mean that you can find joy in your life. For my favorite part of the work for other people is just, I know that my life changed forever when my friend proved to me that my grandfather was with me. And that for me is my favorite part. It's this idea of separation that we have, that there's heaven and they're off somewhere, that they might get stuck on the way, and just to know that they're there, that they don't miss anything, that they see everything. I did a reading for somebody this week, such a simple thing, but her partner said she's kept my mug. And when I said to her, you've got his mug, his special mug, she said she chucked out all of the other ones, but just one she couldn't bear to get rid of, and she'd put it back in the cupboard. And so to somebody else that might not be that meaningful, but to her that means he was with her when she did that. He saw that, and that is bloody amazing.
That's so, what a way to help someone heal. That. And yes, it's so simple, and spirit is so simple, but the ramifications or the ripple effects are so important and so healing. I did a podcast episode on the fear of death, because that's something I have struggled with all my life, and I still struggle with it. I've noticed the more I do this work, the more, and it's actually not so much when people book readings with me, it's more when I'm in circle. The more I practice in circle over time, I'm learning that practicing mediumship is sort of working as a coping mechanism for me with my fear of death.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it really, through the readings I've done in circle or one-on-one with folks, it has really taught me to cherish each day, because we don't know when our time is up, when our story in this physical life that we're in now is going to end.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, it has definitely done that for me too. It has. Well, before we wrap up, how can folks learn more about you? Where can they find you, and what services can they work on with you?
Wow, that's a big question. I've got a website. It's hannahmedium.co.uk. You can obviously listen to the podcast, and there's all sorts of stuff. You can get card readings, you can get loved one and spirit connections, depending on when I've got space. I do sometimes get very booked up and sometimes not so much. I do offer spiritual development. I've got an online healing course. But really, my main work at the moment is doing the podcast and just trying to help people understand their own connection to the spirit world.
Yes, and it's so appreciated. And a little plug for Hannah's TikTok and her reels on Instagram, because they are absolutely amazing and hilarious, and also sometimes, and I want to say, vulnerable. Thank you for being vulnerable with us through your podcast, through your Instagram. I think it helps us feel a little more seen. But also thank you for helping us laugh, because your TikToks can be hilarious sometimes, and I can go into a whole thing about the TikToks that you've done that I love, but people can find them for themselves.
I think I'm funny. They don't always land.
Well, we're laughing with you, so no worries at all. Thank you so much, Hannah. It was such a joy and an honor to have you on Third Eyesight.
Oh, thank you for having me. I loved it. Thank you very much.